Hello, Garland here, and we're hanging out with Sarah from DD Geopolitics. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon, hanging out with Sarah. Sarah, tell everybody where they can find all of your DD Geopolitics stuff online.
Just go to ddgeopolitics.com. It's the easiest place, or just look somewhere on Twitter. We're everywhere. Probably annoying you by now.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I doubt if you're annoying people because you're talking about all of the interesting things. And it's what's interesting is during the recent clash with Iran, I just saw the numbers skyrocket everywhere on YouTube. I mean, if you just came on and said, hello, Iran, Israel, 5,000 people came on and see what the hell you were talking about. It's interesting. I think that's a good thing, because I think what we're seeing is people have had it with the mainstream media. They knew if they turn on the mainstream media, they were going to get nothing but lies. And they wanted to hear people who, like us, who at least are trying to figure out what's going on just like they are. We're not trying to convince them of who the good guys or the bad guys are. We're reporting what we find. We're kind of sometimes wear our hearts and our emotions on our sleeves, just like the people in the chat. And I think people are much more let me say this. People are growing much more comfortable with what they get, whether it's on Telegram or YouTube or Rumble, much more comfortable than some Ivy League educated schlump who's going to just, give them the latest briefing from the Pentagon.
I think there's a feeling of authenticity that people are craving that they don't get from MSM or most journalists, because they go to school for journalism to kind of learn how to talk the way that they do, and people like us usually don't. So there's an element of familiarity there and an element of understanding. And we are also kind of, I know I talk to people all day, every day. So it's not like I'm in these lofty CNN offices. I'm down there talking to them. I think that is something that Americans especially have really craved for a long time.
Yeah. And I'll add this. I think more so than ever, what we get now is people who understand that they're the gatekeepers of the narrative on the mainstream media. And so you'll see them interview, for instance, they'll say, well, so-and-so, they got mad at Tucker Carlson when he interviewed Vladimir Putin because he asked him questions. He just said, all right, what about this? And Putin, how he is, spurted on. And there's how come he didn't challenge him on this? And how come he didn't push back on this? Wait a minute. That's not the job
Right.
He's the president of a superpower.
Right.
I want to find out what the hell he's saying. Exactly. I don't want somebody to correct him. No, you're wrong. You should do what the hell are you? You're not the president of a superpower. You're supposed to be a journalist. You're supposed to be providing me with information I don't have, not reinforcing a narrative so much so that you have to fight with the president of a superpower so you can correct him because what he's saying might not quite align with the latest CIA official narrative.
Think about how far we've gone. I remember as a kid growing up watching Barbara Walters. I worshipped Barbara Walters and Diane Sawyer, and they were decent interviewers too. I think Tucker's probably top 3 interviewers right now on television, if you go on media. And think about how far we've gone to that people see a real journalist asking real questions and they say, he must be working for the Kremlin, just because the questions weren't challenging enough. I guess it's very strange. And I think that's what actually makes Tucker great, is that he doesn't really challenge people like that, from an emotional standpoint. It's from an academic standpoint. People aren't used to that. They're so emotionally charged. It's been 30 years since we had decent interviewers that they've cut everybody out. So
here we are, Sarah. Let's go to it. Let's start here. I'm just going to throw this at you and get your thoughts. There are reports that and I've seen it, put different ways, but that the United States is going to stop some military supplies to Ukraine. I've seen air defense missiles. I've seen other things that said most or all. So at this point, it's still a little cloudy as to what. I'm pretty sure air defense missiles are, at a premium. They ain't getting none of them. They're going to Israel, right? But your thoughts on both the, what do you think's really happening? And let me add this: we've heard that before. Remember, for a week, we're going to stop all supplies to Ukraine. A week later, well, okay, we never really did stop supplies, but we said we were, and they're starting up again, even though they never stopped. Your thoughts on the narrative, your thoughts on, is it true? Your thoughts on the response by the Europeans, all of that on this business about military supplies going to Ukraine or not.
The air defenses are gone. I mean, this is a big charade about the air defenses and their interceptors between Ukraine and Israel. It is not normal to shift air defense systems from the capital of a European country to the capital of another country. That's crazy. That's a shortage. That's a big. Played it off as if it was like, we're just moving assets. And then the interceptor stories started coming out, and they've depleted 1/5 of the world's supply of THAAD interceptors. And the Iron Dome does not do anything against ballistics. So they're struggling with that. I mean, honestly, in the interceptor and air defense department, we're all struggling. All of the West is struggling to make ends meet. And they are costly. I had no idea the THAAD cost and the labor that went into it. We only make $500 a year, and they used thousands against Iran. So things are not going that well. There's also a lot of private companies that are involved in arming Ukraine, so that might help set that off a little bit. And now I think Britain, in conjunction with Andorra, is signing a drone contract or a drone aid plan for Ukraine. So there's some slack picking up, but I think that they're using this more as a statement, like, oh, we're finally cutting the aid to Ukraine, when really it's that they can't give Ukraine what they need. So I think that might be a little bit of it. What are your thoughts?
I think you're right there. I do. That's a good point. I think there are a variety of factors that it's not just as easy as they're cutting Ukraine aid because of one thing or another. I think there's a number of factors, and I think you hit most of them. But I think the important being, number one, they're running out of stuff. We're starting to hear more and more that the stockpiles are getting low. Well, you know what? The empire's been at war with friggin' everybody for the last 3 years. What a shock! The stockpiles are getting low, but you had the the Israel-Iran skirmish, shall we say, here, and that really depleted a lot of air defense stuff. Our stockpiles were already low. Our industrial ability to produce these things is not good, right? It's weak, I would say. And of course, I'm reading the U.S. envoy to NATO says, this is what America first looks like, right? This is what America first looks like. We have to take care about the United States needs. The Pentagon needs to make sure that the U.S. has the strategic defense capabilities necessary. Here's what's interesting: to project power. Isn't that interesting? We got to be able to project. We don't need to defend ourselves. We need to. And see, what he's saying is, we are an empire. We have to project power all over the world. And sorry, Ukraine, when we said as long as it takes, well, this is how long it takes. That's it. We told you we'd be there with you as long as it takes. This is pretty much as long as it takes. You're screwed. And we got to protect power. And here's the thing about it. If you're starting wars and you can't afford to keep them going, you're fooling yourself to think that you can project power, because you can't.
I agree. And that's why they're kind of poking around and throwing pasta at the walls in Iran. They're kind of like, where can we establish deterrence? Is there anywhere we can establish deterrence? It's kind of like the end of World War II, when we bombed Japan to show, don't mess with us. We're trying to do, we didn't have to bomb Japan. It's kind of what happened a little bit in Iran. Even Trump compared it to Hiroshima. I mean, it was kind of like, where can we establish this deterrence? Nobody's deterred in Ukraine. China's doing loops around Taiwan. I think there's a lot of desperation here. Honestly, I'm not really. Yeah, throwing pasta at the walls means you see what sticks. You kind of just toss. They're asking in the comments. They kind of just toss out ideas and see what sticks. And I think that's kind of what's going on here a little bit. They need to establish deterrence and project power, and they're just not doing that successfully in Ukraine.
Well, here's the other part of it too. I think the U.S. has a big weakness in its, shall we say, fighting style, right? Okay.
Right.
You go into a bar and there's this big guy and he's big and strong and he gets in a fight and he tries to swing at somebody's head with all he has and knocks him out. But if he doesn't, he
Mhm.
landed or he doesn't knock him out, he doesn't really have any stamina to go for a while. He's planning on knocking him out. And if the guy can block the punch or ducks the punch, now the guy's on his toes and this guy can move and stick, hit him with something over here, run around, wear him out. You know what I mean? The guy can go longer and this guy's more agile. And this guy says, I'm not as big as strong as this guy is, but I can run around for a while and wear him out and he'll drop a heart attack or I can get him some kind of way, right? It's two different. It's one guy's going to swing with everything he has. Remember this? Iraq was going to be called shock and awe. We're
Mhm.
going to hit them so hard with that first punch right in the head that they'll either go down or they'll be afraid. They won't be, and they'll just give in.
Exactly.
But it didn't work. How about Iran? We're going to shock and awe them with intelligence and killing generals and all of this, and they'll just fall apart. But if they don't, now that little guy's running around you, just wearing you out, and you're getting tired, and you're some big schlump. You're not made for a long fight. So the empire comes in and punches Iran. They swing for all they want and they miss. And now they're in a long fight with this little guy who's like a jogger. You ain't never going to win that one. And so now, and I think what's happening, if you even think about Ukraine, what did they do? We're going to start the war, and then we're going to shock and awe Russia with sanctions, and then Russia's going to collapse, and we'll come in, and they'll turn on Putin, and boom, boom, boom. That didn't happen.
Mhm.
Now we're in a long war, and they're going to lose. So I think what people are seeing is the empire can come in and throw a big punch at you, whether it's sanctions or knocking out some of your generals or something. But not if. When that doesn't work and they get into something long, they can't fight it.
I agree, and that's a good point. You brought up war fighting styles, and I don't know if you caught it, but last night Dinesh D'Souza debated Nick Fuentes, and why it was interesting is because it felt like they were talking from different time periods. And Dinesh D'Souza's talking about shock and awe and how you're supposed to hit an enemy as hard as you can to establish deterrence and not allow them to get back up. And exactly that. And Nick Fuentes is like, okay, but that doesn't work anymore. It's not working. It's a very neocon sort of idea, and we have not adapted. And the interesting thing about what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, is that Russia is amassing troops foot on foot. And the United States is like, well, why are they what it's not drone warfare, it's not video games. This is real warfare. And I don't think the United States understands what they've gotten themselves into. And I agree that they've backed themselves into a corner and they're trapped in a very long war now.
And I'll go one further. I can't think of a time when it's ever worked. I can't think of a time when the U.S., like I said, it's just like a bar fight. If
Yeah.
somebody comes in and they take a if you hit somebody right in the head and they're not looking, maybe you'll knock them out. But even then, if you don't knock them out, then you got a long fight on your hands, and we're not built. Right now, think about it. If the U.S., oh yes, we must stand up to China. We must deal with China. Okay, what are you going to do? Go
Yeah,
fire a bunch of weapons at Chinese something or others
exactly.
for a couple hours. What happens after the first day when the smoke clears and China's ready for a long war and you're out of air defense missiles? You think you're out of air defense missiles with Iran? China's going to fire 100,000 of them at you a week. and I mean, literally, they've got one factory that has no people. It's a robot factory. I was watching it online. One factory. Robot factory makes missiles, 1,000 a day. 1,000, one factory. I suspect they got more than one factory.
Oh,
So
absolutely. If they have one.
I'm just suspecting they probably got 1,000 factories. You know what I'm saying? I mean, literally, I would bet you China has literally they got millions of missiles. So you don't have the air defense missiles. So these idiots, they lose to the Houthis. That should have been a clue, apparently.
Mhm.
But you know what I mean? But you're looking at them and they're trying to project power, and you're saying your style, your method of warfare doesn't work. It has never worked. It has no chance of working. And what the hell are you even doing? I don't know. Anyway, maybe I'm not making any sense.
No, I think you're highlighting something really important. It's the short-sightedness of American foreign policy and war strategy. It's the what do we got to do right now? And we're facing now countries that are thousands of years old, or nations, I should say, that are thousands of years old. They're not thinking in the next year, 10 years. They're thinking in the next 500. So for them, a year-long war is in this grand scheme of things is not even a drop in the bucket. To us, that's a major endeavor, and so there's it's a cultural thing as well.
Yeah, I think didn't Russia have a 26-year war or something like that? You think about this. How long's Russia been around? Like 1,000 years or
Mhm.
something? How long's Iran been around?
Oh,
2,000 years? How long
two,
has China been around? Three,
five.
four, 5,000 years? So think about this. We got 2,000 years is that's the new country.
Mm-hmm.
1,000, excuse me, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. These are civilizations. US has been around 250 years.
Yeah.
And we think that we're going to take these countries somehow, we're going to take down countries, the youngest that's been around for 1,000 years. And we're like, okay, we'll just go ahead and go up against these countries and we'll outsmart them.
How? Literally how? I just don't. It's hubris. I mean, the most recent book, I think it was by Glenn Decent, talks about, and Andre Martiana talks about the hubris of America going to be its downfall in this war. And I think there's still a lot of that going around.
All right. Your thoughts on this? It seems to me that the Russians are intensifying their attacks. And here's what I think. The Russians, again, if you think long term, right? Let's say you're the Russians and you can continue to batter the Ukrainians over the course of a 3-year period. But I'll put it like this. What was it? The old Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope, right? He keeps fighting a fight till the guy gets tired and the guy's arms drop. And when the guy, I love these fighting analogies. The guy gets so tired that his arms drop. And when his arms drop, he just knocks him down. He's so tired, you can't hold his arms up anymore. Okay. If you're the Russians and you're like, okay, we know 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but we know sooner or later these suckers are going to run out of air defense and they're going to run out of stuff. You just keep hitting them, and you save everything for when their hands drop, and then you knock them down. And now the Russians have been hitting them, and the U.S. is like, hey, we're out of air defense missiles, and we really don't have anything to help you out anymore. And the Russians are like, well, what do you know? Looks like you're kind of naked there, Ukraine. We've been watching our clocks, figuring sooner or later this would happen. And all of this talk about an attack and major big arrow offensives and all of that. Why would we do that when you still had some defensive capabilities? Now that you got nothing else and you're naked on the battlefield, that's when the Russians come in and squash them like a fly. That's what I think. I think they've been waiting for this. And now you'll see some real pain coming.
Yeah, I think it's going to look like this the beginning, the first year of the war again. Remember those videos? That stuff was wild. That was crazy. I think we're going to see a lot more like that. You see Russia responding to the news and how things are shifting. They, once the air defense systems were shipped to Ukraine, they pounded, or shipped to Israel, they pounded Kiev. And recently, with this weird thing going on with Azerbaijan and Ukraine, they're starting to bomb refineries that deal with Azerbaijan. Russia is responding to the news militarily. There's a 50,000 troop buildup around Sumy. They're talking about establishing a buffer zone now. Since nobody will agree to a buffer zone, they said, screw it, we'll make our own. Russia's running through Ukraine now like a hot knife through butter. And I think you're right. I think a lot of it was about biding time and waiting and kind of, when I remember in the beginning, a few Russian officials said 5-10 years, easy, this war, 5-10 years. And we were like, no, you guys can do this in like 2. I don't think they wanted to. I don't think that was possible. And now we're looking at, they're doing 2, 3, 4 villages a day. They're small settlements, but they're moving. It's quite an achievement. They're bombing Lvov. Like, they're working on the West now. Things are getting very serious and very kinetic. And the worst part about it is someone asked Trump about this troop buildup, and he was like, oh, are they?
Yeah. Well, so be it. We got nothing to send them, so I guess they're on their own. Oh, well, sucks to be them. That's kind of the way Trump is now. And I think we're right. From the Russians' perspective, you're right. This wasn't about the calendar to them. Let's just say historically, Russians don't fight with a calendar. They fight with artillery. So they're not like, well, you remember this? Well, the Russians want to have so-and-so taken by May 9th. Remember, this was like 2 years ago. By May 9th, they want to win such and such so they can have this. And the Russians were like, yeah, whatever. May 9th, we could care less. We're doing what we do. Oh, yes, President Putin's going to meet with so and so, and they want to have some victories by then. And the Russians just kept doing what they were doing. And I just think they were continuing to take advantage of whatever was there strategically, with the understanding that industrially we are superior. And at some point, they ain't going to be able to keep up with us. At some point, we're going to keep making stuff and they ain't going to have nothing. And once that happens, it's a rout. And why should we waste all of this people and soldiers and energy and lose all this stuff when we're kind of fighting them toe to toe? We'll continue to beat on them. But once they get to a point where it's a rout, and I think what the Russians say, it's going to be a rout. Here's the other part. I think they part of it too was this. I think they wanted to demilitarize NATO. I think they wanted time for NATO to keep sending stuff in there so they could blow it all up. So by the time Ukraine did get in trouble, NATO wouldn't have anything left to send them. NATO wouldn't be, you know what I mean? They'd be out of tank. Everything that NATO could possibly attack Russia with, they've sent to Ukraine and it's already been blown up. And that's the other advantage Russia has over this long-term strategy. Your thoughts?
I'm sorry, I missed the question. I like
No problem.
blank.
No problem. I was saying this. I said, I think the other advantage that Russia got out of this long-term strategy is that they demilitarized NATO, in that NATO kept sending stuff in and they got to blow it up. So even if NATO is like, well, we're going to come in, they're going to be like, as soon as we get some more tanks and stuff built, because all of that's been blown up.
It's seriously been like that. I mean, it became a meme. It was like game changer, right? Come in. And the Russians are like a new thing to blow up. You know, it's kind of been like that. The demilitarization of, and you really can see the things that Putin was actually worried about with this administration is the things that they've actually turned against the United States administration. He was very worried. He, you know, I know that you remember, I think we talked about it. He was like, I want Kamala to win. I don't want anything to change. We like stability. We want to keep doing what we're doing. That instability that Trump brought in, the Russians have capitalized on and used it in their long-term plan. When the peace talks were going on, you know, everybody on the has been reporting on this for years, knew they weren't going to work out. But the Russians analysts that I spoke to were like, watch, Putin's going to use these very strategically. And he did. He showed they were going nowhere. Now there's no air defense. Trump isn't even keeping track of what's going on the ground. And they are running through Ukraine. It's very, very interesting to see. Trump is not a good politician, but I think we could talk about that later. I don't want to get us off course.
Well, he's emblematic of the decay of the empire, I think. You know what I mean? I don't think you could get a better...
Outfoxed by Putin, outfoxed by Xi, outfoxed by Netanyahu. It's like, what are we doing here? What's the strategy? What's the plan?
I'll put it like this. As the Iranians put it, thank God for making my enemies fools. And Voltaire, there's a famous Voltaire quote that says something like, I only ask God for one blessing, and that is that he make my enemies fools. And that blessing, you know, that prayer was granted. What you're looking at, it's not just Trump. The neocons are idiots. You know what I mean? They're always got a plan that ain't going to work. They're like Wile E. Coyote super genius. Oh, I've got a plan and it's going to get the Roadrunner this time. And of course, like a boulder falls on them and they get mushed. So it's the collective Trump, and it's the neocons, the people that are trying to drag him around in whatever direction they can drag him around. All of that together makes a very stupid empire. And let me throw this at you. One could argue that this conflict with Iran has been, number one, in cold, hard reality, beneficial to the Russians. Number two, is weakening the empire a lot, very much weakening the empire. Your thoughts on how the conflict in Iran affects the whole imperial move to take out Russia and China and all of this crap they're trying to do?
I wholeheartedly, again, believe that going after Iran at this time was also seen as a way to establish deterrence or to get Russia and China back in some sort of kinetic activity instead of them just waiting for you to fail. So I think There was a lot of that. I do also think that in the short term, this could be very beneficial to Russia. But I worry about them not playing. Well, I'm sure they'll play it correctly, but the long term is what's important, because if things get out of hand in Iran, or the United States suspects that they're losing grip, they'll just start triggering wars elsewhere, and they need to be prepared for that. And they shouldn't let Iran get to that point. We're already seeing things kind of flare up with the Azerbaijanis. Serbia's kind of starting to get a little weird. So I worry about the long term, and that's why they shouldn't be looking so much at the short term advantages, because I don't think that they're conducive to the long term needs. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. There's long term and short term, issues that have to be addressed. There's the here and now, and the here and now. One of the things I think that it has done, that it is doing, again, it is disarming NATO, because this is NATO. Look over there. There's British ships, Italian ships, French ships, you name it, right? It is disarming NATO. NATO's, the THAAD system, the US NATO system, this THAAD system, these other systems are running out of air defense missiles. And I think the US empire, they're starting to say our stockpiles are low. I think they're getting towards, if they continue with the foreign policy that we have currently, 6 months to a year from now, the shortage will be critical. They'll be like, okay, everybody in the world, we want to go to war with you. Could you guys give us about 24 to 36 months so we can restock our air defense missiles? And the rest of the world's going to go, no, in fact, we can't. So let's keep going. I think the US is rapidly approaching a critical shortage of military hardware. And that is going to be something that is going to have a dramatic effect on the U.S. ability to, quote, project power. I think they're literally, physically, and Iran was a big part of it, running out of stuff.
They're running out of stuff, and I think they're running out of steam too. That their soft power is heavily affected, and it's actually soft power. Interestingly enough, has a trickle up effect almost. The people get into it, and then it goes up, and that's in the leadership now. Are like, who? Well, there's no soft power here. The soft power is diminishing. I think that's also important, and we're running out of crap. And the bombs that were made specifically for bombing Fordo didn't ruin Fordo. So it's like, what are we talking about here? I mean, it's silly. It's a charade. It's a charade, big time.
You make a good point too, and that is this. Now, it's hard to delineate between this bullshit narrative and policy and what they actually accomplished, because, okay, so what do they say? First of all, Iran's not trying to develop nukes. That's what the IAEA had said that. Our intelligence and Tulsi Gabbard said that. Trump says, I don't care. We got to stop them from getting nukes. I don't care if everybody says if they don't want nukes. My people say they don't want nukes. Everybody says they don't want nukes. We got to stop them from getting nukes. So we're going to fly these planes in and bomb these things to stop them from getting nukes. But first, we better call them and let them know we're coming. So, we won't have too much trouble here. Hey, guys, we're going to come bomb this area and to stop you from getting nukes. Okay, yeah, but don't tell anybody, click. So that gets out everywhere. So they fly some bombs over, drop some fake bomb. Who the hell? They could have dropped a cardboard picture of a bomb. They told them they were coming. If there was anything there, of course, obviously, it was long gone. They drop and there's 3 or 4 holes. Well, wait a minute. I thought they were supposed to all go in the same hole, one after the other, so they would go further. Nope. There's holes all over the place. And over they go. And then the Iranians call them back, say, all right, I tell you what, we're going to bomb these 2 bases. Just make sure there's nothing in the way so nobody gets hurt. It's a good idea. They bomb the bases, right? This is a bullcrap narrative. They were not trying to bomb Fordo to stop a nuclear program that they already knew didn't exist. And if they were, they wouldn't have called the Iranians first and told them where they were going to bomb. And then they wouldn't have dropped random bombs all over the place. They were supposed to go in one hole after the other to go all the way down and stop it. And then Trump ends up arguing with the media and everybody else. No, it was obliterated. And everybody's like, well, not really. Yes, it was completely obliterated. And I'm like, you're now living in some weirdo narrative where the line between fake attacks that you told your so-called enemy you were going to give first, and nuclear programs that you know don't exist, that you didn't do anything to stop if you thought they existed, which you know they didn't, and you're arguing now with your own press. I'm like, we're in la la land here, Sarah.
I agree. I thought that was so needed really to be thoroughly like inspected and discussed. That weird dichotomy or disparity between what I'm seeing in front of my eyes and what these people are telling me. And it's almost like for a couple days there, it was like, do not watch the news. Like only listen to us and deny everything that you see. It was very, very weird and almost creepy. And we knew, we knew that they both contacted each other about the strikes. It was all just very strange, kind of unsettling. It was very 1984 newspeak-ish, I thought, and it's kind of still going on a little bit. I think my last episode was titled "I said obliterated" because like it would not let that word go, and it just, I don't know, man. It's like, don't believe what your eyes are showing you. Don't believe what your ears are telling you. Just focus on what the Trump administration is saying. It was really uncanny and unsettling, I thought.
Well, here's the other part too. So Netanyahu's coming to town. Now, there's another thing that maybe you can make sense of it to me. I'm gonna throw it at you. Here's something that doesn't make sense to me. One thing is fairly clear. Israel kind of got pulverized. They got hit pretty hard. Israel got hit pretty hard. It seems to me that Iran really focused on, very important strategic targets. They hit their bases and they hit some refineries and they hit research and military industrial things that are really, really important for a country, especially a small country like that who's at war with everybody all the time. Okay. So now what we hear, and I'm like, based on what I see, I'm like, they really crippled Israel. They crippled a small country like that. Okay. Now we hear, all righty, the Israelis are raring to get back at them and fight again. And I'm like, wait a minute, the Israelis just like ran with their tail between their legs because they were getting pulverized. I think God knows how long it's going to take for Israel to get any semblance of a military power back together on their own to really fight. Another 10 to 15 days of that, there ain't going to be no Israel. Let's say, they say, okay, we're going to go start with Iran again, because everybody thinks they're going to attack Iran again. We'll attack Iran again. 10 days, 15 days.
Yeah.
Ain't much left of Israel. It's it's just rubble. Do you think that Israel's going to attack him again? I don't. I hear everybody saying they're going to, and it makes sense that they're going to. Mm-hmm. But if they do, they'll be turned to rubble. And might I add, Iran's saying, all right, we held off the dogs last time. Next time we're coming at you hard, which means that they'll be out of air defense missiles in 8 days. If Iran comes hard at them this time. So to me, what are they going to do? All right, we're going to fight them for another 10 days and then tap out again. Like we're going to go like worldwide wrestling. We're going to go over to the ref and tap somebody else and tell them to get in from the. Anyway, your thoughts of that?
I agree. It's kind of pathetic. It's like, we'll come fight you while we can, and we got to go for a little bit and restock. Like it's a very weird war. And even after they kind of pulled back from Iran, they're like, well, we'll just go mess around with Gaza and Lebanon for a little bit. It's like, it's very strange. They're clearly arming to re-engage with Iran. It's not called a peace. It's not called peace. It's called a ceasefire. The rumblings about talks are very minimal. They, here and there you hear a trickle. Oh, we might talk next week. And Bibi's trial, thanks Trump, was delayed for 2 weeks. So they have to attack Iran, right?
Yeah, but they can't fight Iran for 10 days. We already know 10 days is pretty much the limit.
But we know we're dealing with kind of a rogue, almost suicidal, very reckless state. I also think Trump's backed into a corner. Trump and Bibi kind of need each other. They're in this very symbiotic, enabling relationship. And I don't think one can go without the other. If Bibi goes, this war falls on Trump. So they've got to keep Bibi out of prison, at least for now. And that would be a huge L for Trump if Bibi goes out into prison and he's left with the bag. Like, okay, now what? And vice versa. Bibi needs Trump just as much to keep the party going. So it's a very interesting dynamic these two have going on, and they're giving each other everything they want, everything in their power. Like, okay, you want to look like Jesus Christ at the Last Supper on billboards in Tel Aviv? I got you. We're doing the Abraham Accords ads. Like it's just like constant like glazing and bromance. It's really insane, but they need each other. So the
Yeah.
war is necessary, and it's necessary for both. I mean, we're looking at two people. I mean, Trump probably wasn't going to go to prison, but there was potential there. And now this Bibi is possible, very good possibility he could be found guilty of this stuff. So we're looking at two criminals trying to stay out of trouble with nukes. Like,
I think you're right. Who are running out of weapons?
yes, getting
That's
more
the
and more
other thing.
desperate.
You know, I mean, okay, people, you know, there are people saying, okay, Israel wants to attack Iran. They're getting up to attack Iran again. And I just keep looking at it and I'm like, but they only got a couple weeks of air defense. You know what I mean? I know what they want to do. I know what they intend to do, but they only got a couple of weeks of air defense. How do they go back to Iran and say, all right, we're going to start over again? And we know Iran has hit a lot of valuable sites.
Yeah.
And they can't build them up in 2 weeks, rebuild all these things in 2 weeks, which means that Iran is going to go to their next bank of targets. Iran's going to say, all right, we hit all these targets. We'll hit some of them again. And now we got a second bank of targets. Let's wipe them out. And then we'll go to the third bank of targets. And they're not really able to stop them. And then by the time Iran gets to the third bank of targets, they'll be completely out of air defense missiles. And it'll just be a naked, you know, a country waiting to get hit by, you know, basically the Iranians could use a catapult and throw rocks at them and hit it at that point. So I don't know. Maybe they will attack them. I think Bibi is coming to town to say to Trump, you got to do it because we can't. I think that's what he's saying. But if Trump does it, then his economy gets obliterated.
Yeah, but he gets a big MAGA win. They're all dying for a W. So, I mean, I don't think Trump is a fiscal conservative. I think he's quite the opposite. So I don't think he cares much about blowing up the economy. But I on Monday, I do believe that they're planning for the next assault, the next strike, or how they're going to go about it. They're also making moves to isolate Iran diplomatically and economically, especially in the region, building up the Abraham Accords, bringing Syria in. They've tapped Syria to be the regional army to keep Hezbollah in line. Lots of weird things happening. That's sort of they don't really hurt Iran, but they're kind of Iran-centric, kind of moving things into place. You know, they took out the radar systems in Iraq. They're kind of messing with people there. They've got ISIS cells working in Lebanon. So things are kind of upticking because it's going to be like that kind of sort of guerrilla warfare, this hybrid warfare, because, like you said, they can't really engage properly. I mean, there's Mossad cells still in Iran right now completing attacks because they can't engage properly.
Well, I'll put it like this. I don't think Trump cares to the economy up to a point. I think Trump realizes if the economy crashes, and I mean real crash, I mean 1929 style or worse, which is a potential. You know what I mean? You fire a nuke, that's what you're looking at. In reality, that's what you're looking at. 1929 would be pleasant times compared to what we're looking at, or the Straits of Hormuz close, and then you get massive increase. Let's say gas goes up to $8 a gallon, $9 a gallon, right? Their economy is fragile. They couldn't handle that. Once the layoffs started, all the people would go. It would destabilize our country. See, that's the other part. I would say this: there's one thing that the ruling elite is really afraid of, always in every country, and that is internal uprising. That's what will take them down. They're always afraid that their people will bring out the torches and the guillotines. And I think that when Iran started saying we may close the Straits of Hormuz was when Trump got he got some cold feet over there. It seemed to me, I think that gave him a little bit of cold feet.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. And I've heard they're starting to mine the Persian Gulf. I think that might have been a bit of an issue. Plus, again, Israel's refineries were heavily targeted. They need oil badly. And Russia's blowing up oil refineries in Ukraine that connect to Israel. So yeah, there's a fuel shortage going on. So that could definitely have played a factor. Gas here is not going down. So it went down a bit, but it's not, it's kind of stable. And I think that did have a lot to do with it. The Strait of Hormuz. That's huge. And they know that they know that Iran would let China and Russia through. And that would be very embarrassing for the United States.
It would be very problematic. But I mean, and what are they going to do? Fight Iran in the Straits of Hormuz? Not really, because with anti-shipping missiles today, you couldn't really do that because you'd have to bring ships in, which means you'd have to bring ships in range of anti-shipping missiles, and some of them are going to get hit. And now Americans are going to say, why are our bodies coming home for Israel? I think that that there was a feeling. I actually believe that from Israel's perspective, they wanted Iran to target some bases. I think Israel wanted some Americans to die so they could say, yes, look at this, America, you got to come into war. Americans have been killed. But I think that if some Americans died, there would be a certain amount of fury towards Israel here, where people would say Americans are dying for Israel. And I think that the people in charge maybe haven't taken that into account. But as opposed to Americans are dying now, we've got to fight no matter what. It could go in a different direction. Americans are dying for Israel, and we're mad at you for doing that.
I think so. That happened with George W. I believe it was his father that passed the policy of not photographing journalists not photographing caskets draped in flags. That was a big deal. And I think Obama actually is the one who rescinded that. But yeah, that's kind of always been a thing. And I think it would be worse than ever. It would be worse than ever for Israel right now in this climate. That's why they're using mercenaries right now, guys that are, get paid to kill people. And so if they die, that sort of thing. So they're using mercenaries right now. I agree that if our uniforms started to come home from Israel dead, people would have a fit right now in the way that the cultural and sociological environment is. There's a lot of hate and a lot of criticism for Israel, whether you think it's valid or not. It's up to you, but there's a lot of it. I don't think it would go over well at all.
Your thoughts on the Macron-Putin phone call?
I like it. See, I have a soft spot for Macron.
No, go ahead. Good. I'm glad. This is what we need. Somebody else.
And abused. The poor guy. He's stuck in the charge of France. They're protesting every week.
His wife beats the hell out of him. You see that? She beats him within an inch of his life getting off an airplane. He's a beaten and bruised man.
Reacted to the hit. That man is abused.
That wasn't the first time. Yeah, and that was a two-handed one too. That wasn't a slip like it slapped. No, that was two-handed worse to the face. And I'm like, oh man, two-handed hit. I like that.
And just straightened up.
Yeah.
Yep, we've done this before. I think that France needs help in Lebanon, big time. They have a lot of interest in Lebanon. Israel does not want them there, and the United States and Israel are working very closely with the Lebanese government, and it's kind of squeezing France out. I don't know how many more. Not colonies. Lebanon's not a colony of France, kind of was at one time, but I don't know how much more decolonization France can actually handle. They're kicked out of Africa completely. So, they're kind of holding on to the Levant and New Caledonia.
A lot of nickel there.
Nowhere. That's all they have left.
They got nickel. They get nickel from New Caledonia.
Yeah, so I think that's part of it. And I don't think France does not want to fight a war. They do not with NATO. Nobody, and the French don't want to fight a war with NATO. Macron knows that would go over terribly. They've been almost as hesitant as Spain on a lot of measures. He's pushed back against Israel. He needs a friend outside of the West. So I'm not shocked that the phone call took place. I think it's a good thing. I don't like Macron in the political sense, but I think it's a good thing as one of the European leaders making contact with Putin. It's been years since they spoke. Years. So hopefully it was a good thing, but he did try to say, ceasefire in Ukraine, blah, 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 the usual.
I remember at the beginning of the conflict, shortly after it started, I'll never forget, I reported on this, they spoke, and what was reported to have been said was that Putin told Macron, we will achieve our objectives in the special military operation, either by diplomacy or force of arms. The very beginning, he told him, look, we got objectives, you know what they are. Let's make a deal. But if you don't make a deal, you do what we got to do. That's up to you. It's your decision. We'll go either way. But if you decide you want to talk, we'll talk. If it's fighting, we'll fight. And I think it is proving that the Russians had made a decision at that point to what they were going to do. And they weren't going to take some half-assed Minsk III deal. That's not going to happen. No. But now let me ask you this. I don't think Macron was just speaking for Macron. I think there are various entities in Europe that may be looking at it saying, look, we're screwed, guys. The Americans are going to the Middle East. They ain't sending us nothing else. The Americans probably gave them a call. Look, before the NATO guy came out and said, we ain't sending nothing else, I guarantee they called the Europeans, hey, guys, we got bad news for you. We ain't sending nothing else. Figure out how you're going to deal with it. Have a nice day. Bye. Slam. And I'm sure they got together and said, what do? Somebody's got to call Putin. Macron, you called him last. Your turn. Okay, what do I say? I don't know what the hell you say. Say something. We're screwed. That's probably how the conversation went. That's my guess.
I think so. I think that they kind of know that are screwed. And that Ukraine is now supposed to just kind of be a money laundering, weapons sort of training ground. And I think that Europe's getting caught with the bag, and it's always France, and it's usually Germany too, but Germany is long gone. But now it's kind of a France and Spain, maybe maybe Portugal and a few others of these EU countries that are like, we're sick of this crap.
Yes.
So it's just, I feel bad for Europe, honestly. I think the EU was a mistake.
Well, mistake is one way to put it. You know what I mean? To me, a mistake is when you step on a rake and then the front of it comes up and smacks you in the head. You didn't see that coming. That was in the grass. It was an accident. That was a mistake. When somebody says to you, hey, don't jump in that pond, there's alligators, and you say, the hell with that, I think I'll be fine, and then you get eaten by alligators, that ain't a mistake. That's stupidity. That's kind of cosmic justice, shall we say. So my point is this. I don't think they made a mistake. I think they should have been able to see this coming. Here's a guy. Now, let me show you this. This is a guy who's leading them into battle. This is Keir Starmer. This is a guy who recently, said, we're ready to fight with the Russians. We're getting prepared for war. Look at this guy, man. He is a brutal and vicious man. I wouldn't want to go 3 rounds with him. Let's watch the fighting skills of Keir Starmer. Look at that punch. Ugh. Ugh. Oh, man, that guy's, look at that punch. For God's sake.
Vote Labor.
Yeah, exactly.
Please clap.
That's what we're looking at.
He reminds me of UK Jeb Bush.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Jeb Bush is a macho guy, BC. He reminds me of the UK Lindsey Graham, more like, He's like, huh?
How do we do this?
He looks, you know what he looks like? He looks like punching that bag. He looks like Joe Biden looking for somebody to shake hands with.
He's a metaphor for the British. He's lost and has no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, not the British, but the British government. Lost and no clue.
Let me ask you this. Let's go domestic for a second. The big, beautiful bill.
So I'm not a bill person. I rely on a lot of people to kind of analyze these things. I don't have the patience. I heard it was 900 or 1,600 pages, something wild. From people that I trust, it doesn't sound like a great thing. And I think it's going to pass. But more so, it's turned out to be just an absolute circus and a weird blackmail sort of tool. We have Nancy Mace running around the country in her pajamas with carrying her dog, screaming about the big, beautiful bill. Thomas Massey's pushback is being met by a president who's saying, I'll primary you. I think that the stuff surrounding the bill, in addition to what's inside of it, is wild. The AI portion is something that we really harped on because they were taking the rights of states to regulate AI away for 10 years. We know what AI has done in 2 years. Can you imagine what it can do in 10? Oh my God. It's crazy. And so they were like, oh, we'll get rid of it. They didn't get rid of it. They hid it in another section. It's if you really get into the bits and pieces, it's a very creepy bill that seems like it's setting up stuff for a surveillance state.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's stuff, and it's 1,600 pages, which means they got it snuck in there. Mm-hmm. Where you'll never even know. They won't talk about it. What the heck? And then maybe 6 months from now, you'll be people I was reading through that bill and I found out that the Constitution is pretty much gone. You know what I mean? Wow. You're going to be like, what the hell? They put Palantir in charge of the Supreme Court. All decisions on AI will go to Palantir as opposed to the Supreme Court, something like that. Here's the other thing about it. I think it shows that Trump, in my opinion, was the Republican Obama. in that.
Somebody said that last night.
Yeah, he was so much the Republican Obama. Obama came in and he was gave us all of these wonderful things he was going to do, and he was against the system, and we've got change, and he's going to do all these things different. And he came in and he was Mr. System guy. He was Wall Street Joe, right? And Trump did all of that. He talks about the spending and how it has to be brought back. He talks about this crazy out of control spending and deficit, and he's going to do this. Then he comes in and he brings in old Doge boy Musk, and Musk is like, yes, we've got to lay off all of these soccer moms at the Department of Environment and blah, blah, blah. And we've got to cut this and cut that. And we're going to save money, blah, blah, blah. And Trump comes in, and right off the bat, if you just go by the military increase, it's 10 times more. Actually more than that, but let's just go with that. 10 times more than Musk allegedly saved. 10 times more than he allegedly saved. Just the military spending alone. Supposedly somewhere around $9 to $15 billion he saved, or Musk, supposedly. Yeah, supposedly. And it's they're increasing 150 billion alone, and then it's like a 5 trillion. They like raised the deficit ceiling to by $5 trillion, so it's a 5 trillion increase. And all Trump did is the same thing every single one of them do when they run the deficit through the roof. And here's what they say: giant tax cuts for the rich, all that stuff. And here's what they say: but fair enough. It seems on the surface, one may look at this and think, yes, it dramatically increases the deficit, but it's going to grow the economy by so much that we'll get 5 times more than that. The snake oil salesman, right? He sells you something. Let me tell you, I'm going to sell you this. You can go out and make so much money with this. You'll make 100 million times. Garbage. It's trash he's selling you. Right?
I agree.
That's all we got from Trump. The same old trash. Mm-hmm. I'm going to dramatically increase the deficit, and I'm going to bullcrap you and tell you that it's going to grow the economy so much we'll get 5. No, it's not. It's not going to do anything but enrich the ruling elite as always. In other words, to me, it's the whole MAGA scam was a fraud from Trump. Literally, it was a fraud.
Literally, that the meme that's going around is it's called the "Fell for It Again" award.
I like that.
Yeah, and it belongs to Elon, I think, but.
Yes.
The story of Elon is very interesting. How evil do you have to be to then use what somebody put together against them? Now Trump is saying, well, I'll just use Doge to get rid of Elon's grants.
Yeah.
Now. What kind of stuff is this? Like, what is going on? It's crazy. And you could tell by Elon's exasperations that even when he was, and I'm not an Elon fan. I don't even don't like the guy, but you could tell his hands were completely tied. We went down from like $1 trillion to like 150 billion, and then we got like 20 billion.
Right.
So it's just crazy. It was a total bait and switch for MAGA themselves. They got baited and switched on no new wars. They got baited and switched on taxes. They got baited and switched on mass deportations. They got baited and switched on so many things. It's very sad. And, it's the tribalism is actually what's incredible, I think.
Yeah, now they got to deal with cognitive dissonance, where they just thought Trump was to be out. He was going to do all these wonderful things, and they got had on every. What's interesting, when it came to immigration, they said immigration, we're getting rid of all of these. We're just going to mass deport all of them. And there were people like me who said, look, I believe that you don't have a nation state without secure borders. So certainly the borders should be secure. However, there are mitigating factors here that you can't ignore. Number one, they're like these fruit pickers and seafood harvesters and all of these people, that the only people that do that now are undocumented immigrants. And if they just cannibal all of them, there are a number in the real world, there are a number of industries right now that will just collapse right now. Who's going to pick the pears and the grapes and the things? That's reality. It is what it is. We can like it or not like it. Okay. And Trump, they all got to go. Right. And people like us said, well, okay, I understand what you're saying about immigration. Hope it gets dealt with. But there are some realities that must be addressed. No. So what happens? Donald Trump starts the mass deportation. And then all of a sudden he comes out and says, I got some calls from some businessmen. And they said, my businesses are going to go under if I don't stop this, mass deportation, exactly what those of us who were kind of realists said. There's certain businesses, it is what it is. What I'm going to do, get rid of all the grape pickers, all the grapes rot. That's reality. Okay. So Trump comes out and says that, and let's face it, he's just completely stopped it. And it makes me think to myself, he was never really. He came out and he did some PR things where they grabbed some people and they threw them. And now it's simply, if I don't like somebody, hey, I want to mass deport Elon Musk. I don't like what he said. Or that guy over there, I don't like him. Oh, did he say something about Zionism or Israel? Send his ass to El Salvador. Now it's just become a method that you can use to smite your enemies. And exactly what people like me said in the beginning, what about the grape pickers? You're going to run into a pain in the neck. He used that for us out. I don't think he ever planned on doing mass deportations.
No, he knew we couldn't. He talked about this in the last administration. They knew they couldn't because of their business interests and their friends. What they did do this go around is their friends said, by the way, we can also make money off of imprisoning them. And so now they're building a prison. And it's also a tourist attraction. And it also sells merch. So that's really where we are now. We have a president literally screaming, I'll deport you for not liking my big, beautiful bill. I'll deport the guy in New York City because he eats rice with his hands and he's a commie. And well, you can go visit them down at Alligator.
Or if you protested against Israel, we got to send you overseas for that.
And make sure you pick up some merch while you're there in Florida. It's the most ridiculous thing if you really think about it.
It really is. Just, if it wasn't so serious, it would be laughable to watch this now. And here's the thing about Musk. Although, like I said, these billionaires, I never feel but so sorry for him. The guy lost like 150 billion because he latches on with Trump, and he's so happy. Oh boy, look at us! And people get pissed off. They're burning Teslas. They're burning their dealerships. All the liberal, all the Starbucks latte drinking liberals that drive Teslas now. They're pissed at Elon Musk, so they're not buying their. Elon Musk got mauled economically. He got mauled out of this. And what did he get? And then after all of that, he helps Trump get elected. He gets economically mauled. And then Trump says, damn you disrespected me. I'll take your citizenship and send you overseas.
Isn't that wild? Wild.
They How about this? Here's the question.
Well, he has Peter Thiel now. Peter Thiel is Elon with more money and less chaos. So he had Peter Thiel back then, but they've really, really grown close to Palantir, and SpaceX was kind of on the outs a bit. They really prefer Palantir and OpenAI by Sam Altman or whatever his name was. Yeah, they prefer those two. They're much more polished. Anduril is the weapons privatizer, and Elon's over here like, I just want to go to Mars. And they're like, well, there's no war on Mars yet. So
you're right.
I mean, the thing they did to Elon is you're right. He did get mauled. He went from being a liberal kind of brand and they really supported him and he was almost leaning. Do you remember when he was kind of in with the left? He was almost
with the liberals. I don't call being a lefty. I don't call the liberals
the sock dems and the dem socks. Those kind of
exactly.
kind of scoring points with them. And then he had to hitch his wagon to MAGA, and now he's got Ted Cruz driving a Tesla. Now what does he do? But now they all hate him. Like he really he really had the screws put to him.
Elon Musk's problem is every now and then he asks questions. And he actually, for all of my issues with Musk, he actually expected some consistency. Like when Trump said, we're going to do this, Elon Musk thought it was really going to do
Elon Musk is very autistic to the genius level, and autists almost always, they don't understand, not that they don't understand it. They really like order, and that when you say something, you're going to do that thing. And that's what I think that was probably kind of like Elon, like, what are we doing here? Like, what is all this? Elon's not really into lying. You can kind of tell. He's sort of, what he says he doesn't believe to be a lie. He doesn't feel like a liar. And so I think that he was very put off by this. There's some sort of, Elon's a nutcase, but I don't think Elon is evil. Peter Thiel is evil. And I think that Elon getting sight of that kind of stuff was, maybe I'm projecting, but maybe him getting sights of a lot of that stuff was like,
I think you're right. I think, and this is not a defense or a hatred of Elon. It's just a kind of a critique of Musk. I think you're right. I think you can hate him, love him, whatever you want to, but I think Musk kind of says what he thinks. And then when he says, we're going to do this, I think not understanding politics, he's like, okay, we're really concerned about the deficit, right? Now, granted, I disagree with a billionaire saying we got to cut things that poor people get so that, so that the deficit's better. Why don't you give up some of yours? But okay. But I think when they say we're unhappy with the deficit and we got to address it, I think Musk thinks they really believe it. And he thinks, okay, let's do something about the deficit. He really believes that Trump said, yeah, there's a deficit problem. Do some Doge stuff. We got to fix the deficit. We got to break it. And in Musk's mind, okay, as you said, well, that's what we're going to do. And when Trump said, here's a bill that increases the deficit by $5 trillion, Musk is like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
But we said goes against everything. Instead, he didn't realize he's in Washington, D.C. and they're all a bunch of liars.
He didn't realize he lived in the gray zone. This is now the gray zone. Things don't really make a lot of sense here. It's very Asperger's. It's they really, if you say yes, it means yes. They're very black and white. They don't do well when you're kind of sarcastic, hiding emotions, or putting up facades. It's just not a good place for Elon. I don't think Elon would have ever fit in DC.
No, and he ends up screwed, and now it is what it is. Well, Sarah, thank you very much. I certainly appreciate you taking an entire hour. And wow, we got a total of 3,800 people. I think 3,799 of them are on your channel on Twitter, and I got the other one. So that's great.
No, you did good. I only got 3K on the Twitter. It's fine.
See, there we go. We got 810. That's awesome.
That's a lot.
Well, yeah, and I would say we're also on, let's see, Rumble and live stream. I mean, Rumble and Rockfin. We got a few over there. Whatever the case may be, this is great.
Good.
I certainly appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you sharing this on Twitter, so we get lots of new people seeing us hang out together. And hopefully, well, next week I'll be out of town, but that's okay. The week after I'll be back, and we can talk then.
Definitely, Garnet. Thanks for having me on.
You got anything big coming up on DD Geopolitics? When do you stream? When can people see your stuff?
In a half an hour. I gotta go stream right now.
All right. Well, that's great. So everybody, in 30 minutes. And where can they find you in 30 minutes?
YouTube, X, same places as except for X, same places as Garland. YouTube, X, Rumble, Rockfin, BitChute, whatever.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, everybody, that's Sarah, the Donbass Debushka. That's what the DD Geopolitics means. Everybody, don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms. Follow me on Rumble. Follow me on Rockfin, BitChute, whatever the hell that is. Also like Instagram, Facebook, that kind of stuff. And of course, if you can afford it, Patreon, buy me a coffee, PayPal, one of those, that's fine. If you can afford it. Even if you can't, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you share this on all your social media platforms. And of course, if you see scrolling across the bottom right now, I now have a P.O. box. So there are people that really aren't into the online stuff. So if you want to mail me something, just look at the P.O. box number across and you can snail mail. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day. I'm out.